Civilization 7 released a little over a month ago, and despite having more than 500 hours in the game already, I still find that I'm learning new things every day. Today's video talks about settling. This is a topic that we've done before. You may remember a previous video that we did called Settle Here, and it revisits that video as well as the themes that came through from it and looks at new information that we've learned in the last 3 to 4 weeks since that video was released. So we're going to dive into multiple different spawns here, run through a number of examples, but the first one is going to be a bit more extended. So let's dive in. A random leader, a random civilization on a random spawn, and we're going to do our best to understand everything that goes into a settle. And oh my god, probably not the leader for it right now. Isabella, get out of here. You know what? I didn't even think about Isabella. What have we got? Oh my lord, I haven't seen this natural wonder. You know what? There's going to be a lot of people that want to play this seed, so I'm just going to go ahead and save it. We'll talk about everything that there is to settle or we'll talk everything that there is with settling. We're going to ignore this natural wonder for now. Okay. If you want to play the seed, I'll leave a link in the description on the Discord where you can actually go play this seed. That is that's a nice world wonder. That's incredible, actually. Okay, let's talk a little bit about settling. So the first thing is we want to be settling on the first turn. This is really important because of the way that Civ 7 works. It's going to give you a spawn location like this, and it's going to assume that you settle on the first turn. Then what happens is when you settle, it's going to lock out the rings around your city. So as an example, this is 1 ring. This is 2 rings right here. This is 3 rings that we can see. And I don't know what the exact number. Sorry, that's 1. That's 2. That's 3. I don't know what the exact number is, but I will say right now, what happens is that when you settle, it locks out a certain amount of rings. If you do not settle, the number gets reduced. And I know this because I've gone through a game and I've tested it on the exact same game. I've settled on the first turn and I have not had city-states spawn close to me. And then I've gone and I've skipped the turn, settled in the exact same place, and I've had city-states spawning within 5 to 6 tiles of me, and they've been hostile. This is that game. This is a save from a previous video that we did. And what's interesting about this save is that if you spawn on, or if you settle on the first turn, a city-state will not spawn near you. However, if you settle on the second turn, it will. Here, as an example, what we're going to do is we're just going to take this settling spot, and we're going to go ahead and we're just going to settle immediately, and we'll start with our scout. We'll immediately move out over towards the west side here, and there is going to be an iron tile, and there should be a city-state that spawns immediately near it. However, you'll find that there is absolutely nothing. So what we're now going to do is load up our exact same save, the exact same one that we had before. It's going to be the exact same spawn, but what we're going to do is delay that spawn by 1 turn. And that's going to, emulate basically that we've moved somewhere to get a better position. So now that we've done that, we've now rolled over. It's turn 2. We go ahead and we settle. We go ahead, we grab the scout, and what that's going to show us is that in fact there is a city-state here. It should be Laventa, a scientific city-state that will spawn right here on this tile, and there it is. And that shows us right now that there is indeed something that's happening with the maps. The way that they generate, it is determining based on whether you settle on the first turn or the second turn as to whether you should be having a city-state nearby. And as you can see, this is an aggressive city-state. It's probably going to send its scout directly towards us. We're going to have to deal with this in the early game. There's a lot of fallout from this. So it's a key component of decision-making early, and it's imperative that you're aware of it when you go into making these decisions about how important is it really to settle on the first turn. Just a quick cut in here from editing Drongo, just to clarify something, settling on the first turn doesn't actually prevent city-states from spawning close to you, it just reduces the chance that they spawn close to you. There's still a risk that they do spawn close to you, it's just a lot lower if you settle on the first turn. Okay, so now we've gotten that out of the way. Now keep in mind, there's a caveat to that, and that is just simply, feel free to spawn on the second or the third turn, feel free to settle on the second or the third turn, but just be aware of that, right? There's a risk, a much higher risk, in fact, that you're going to have a city-state nearby that is potentially hostile. So that's the first thing. The second thing is freshwater. Freshwater is a very key component of settling. There's a number of different ways that you can do it, but the best thing to do is just to go ahead and check your settling lens, and you'll be revealing all of your fresh water. And as you can see, we don't have any fresh water down towards this position. Now, if we were genuinely going to play this start with Isabella and in the way that we're doing this, we'd probably just absolutely go past this rule and say, well, we don't care about fresh water because we've got this damn thing. So that's one way to look at it. But Generally, we want to be settling on freshwater. And the reason why is because we get a happiness bonus if we do. If we don't settle on freshwater, we're going to lose the happiness that we gain from settling. Every single city center, every palace starts off with a yield of 5 happiness. However, after the first turn rolls over, if you haven't settled on freshwater, you'll have a -5 happiness penalty. And the reason why this is important is because the more happiness that you build, the sooner that you're going to enter into a celebration. And a celebration is going to allow you to get access to different policies. As an example, there's +3 combat strength for independent powers here. There's +2 food in all settlements. So the more celebrations that you have, the more of these you're going to be able to implement into your policies, and the more happiness that you've got, the more celebrations that you've got. So it basically just works into it. And obviously, another caveat in that, if you do not have an option other than to look for a position or to go to a position that does not have fresh water, then by all means, make sure that you look to try and take that. So the next thing that we're looking for here is, so this is number 3, point number 3. We want to assess how many free tiles are around our city center. And this is a new point, something that we've talked about in our adjacency video that you may have seen, or our yield video that you may have seen. It is because of this that we need to try and keep the ring around our city center absolutely free of any resources or any sort of thing that prevents them from building around that. So as an example, if we were to settle on this tile right here, this would mean that we have 1, 2, 3, 4 tiles that are now locked out, and we can only build on these 2 tiles immediately adjacent to our city center. And the reason why we do this is, despite it not saying anywhere in the game, despite it not telling you anything about it, the building that comes in your city center, now this is only for the capital, it's called your palace. It's different from the ones that come along in towns. Those are called city halls, not town halls. I know, I don't get it either. But that palace has an adjacency bonus. And that means that every quarter that is built next to it, it's going to provide it a culture and a science. And this adjacency bonus can be boosted with specialists. So if you get 2 or 3 specialists in that city center, it can really start to rack up your science and culture. So we want to try and maximize that bonus. There's no reason for us not to. So generally what we want to do is try and maximize the amount of available tiles that are around us. If you can get 5, so the place that we've spawned right now is quite good, then that is an acceptable amount. I would be happy with that, because there are some games that even when I've got 6, I don't actually build in every single tile around my capital, and that's simply because there's higher adjacencies. As an example right here, we've got a lovely little spot for a library or for a blacksmith or any other science or production building. Over here, we've got our monument and villa spot adjacent to 2 natural wonders, and I'm sure you can probably already say, okay, well, what about this spot? Yeah, well, that's looking even better for a monument or a villa. So these are core components of what we're looking to do, because when we're planning out our base, we want to make sure that we've got space. So at least 5 tiles. Now, keep in mind that also means that if you do spawn on coast, there is definitely a good reason to move away from that coast, especially if you've only got maybe 3 or 2 tiles that you can actually build on, because you're not going to be, or you're going to be limited in how many tiles you can actually build on if you're adjacent to the coast or to the navigable river. Navigable river is a little bit more forgiving because you do have access to the bridge, but the coast in particular can be quite difficult. Now, keep in mind, there's only 14 buildings that you can actually build on land in the Antiquity Age, with the exception of buildings that come through from the unique bonuses. So as an example, the Mastaba and the Mortuary Temple, which are unique to the Egyptians. 5 civs have got them, 5 civs don't. They are 2 additional buildings that you can build. On top of that, there's also 3 buildings that go in water, that being the bath, the lighthouse, and the fishing quay. So now that we've discussed the free tiles around the city center, obviously we're not really considering the fact that we're playing Isabella here, or the fact that this is a natural wonder. For the purpose of this video, let's just say that this is not a natural wonder. Let's say that these are just some mountains. So now that we've done that, we want to identify valuable resources. So we want to look at the resources that we've got around us and determine which ones are going to be valuable for the early game. The key that we're looking for is we want resources that provide yields. We want kaolin, we want wool. These provide us significant yields in the early game. Kaolin is great if you can get it within the first couple of citizens. Wool is always good. You always want to grab wool. Often I will find myself settling towns just to send the wool back to the capital. That's how good wool is. But kaolin in particular is an incredibly useful resource in the very early stages of the game, because it's going to help you reach 5 population sooner. The sooner you reach 5 population, the sooner you're going to be able to start getting out a settler, and the sooner you're going to be able to start settling natural wonders or any contested area around your lands. So we want to identify those valuable resources. So other valuable resources include things like cotton, hides. These are all very valuable resources that we can look to try and pick up early. Dates are another good one. these are our primary ones. If we look at, as an example, silk, this only gives us 10% culture. And when we settle our city, while we have 10 culture a turn once we settle, that culture doesn't actually come from the city. So getting this silk is not going to give us +1 culture, even though it has +1 culture on the tile. It would only give you 0.1 culture. And then if we look at the ivory, 10% towards wonders, placed in tropical plains and desert. This is great, but realistically, we're probably not going to be needing that for a while. And instead of just taking the 10% production, we could take something like wool, which is going to give us +2 production. And there's a good chance that we're not going to have 20 production super early on in the game. So that's probably going to give us even more immediate value than something like the ivory. So that's the key component that we're looking for. The next thing that we want to be aware of is high adjacencies. These are specific tiles that have got very good adjacencies for what we want. So the key things that we're looking for is, number one, water adjacencies. Now, that's not minor rivers like this. This is for navigable rivers and for coast. So as an example, if this was the edge of the land and there was coast all around here, then this would receive a huge adjacency bonus for its markets and its gardens. So that's the first thing that we're looking for. The second thing are resource clusters. So here, once again, we've got a +2 adjacency, which we could potentially put a library on. Over here, we've also got a nice +2 and another +2 that's out here. So we could look to try and get those down as well. And then the third thing that we're looking for, and it's a little bit rarer, is the mountain adjacency. And so once again, we've got the mountain adjacency that's right here. So we can talk a little bit about the principles of base building once we get a little bit further on in this save, but there's a couple of general rules that you want to try and follow when you're building your bases, and we'll get into that a bit sooner. But once we look at these spots, we want to make sure that we're going to be able to connect them still. So there's a tile that's already calling to me. I don't know if you guys have seen it yet, but I want freshwater. I want to be settling in my first turn, and I want to be getting access to those resources that are really, really important in the early game. And you know exactly where it is. It's this tile right here. This tile is going to be wonderful for us because it meets all of those criteria, gives us access to the kaolin, which will be lovely for us. And the other important thing, and this is a very key thing, is that we need to, this is the 6th point, we need to identify tiles that we cannot use. So those are mountainous tiles. Those are tiles that have got ocean on them. And the reason why we need to do that is because ideally we want as many tiles in our capital that we can use. We want to be able to build wonders. We want to be able to build cities. We want to make sure our citizens have got, or did I say cities? We want to build urban districts. We want to build quarters. We want to make sure that our citizens have got places to work. The last key thing that we're looking for is the type of tiles that we're going to be building, or the type of improvements that we're going to be building. So when it comes to selecting your improvements, there's 4 key types that you're looking for. The first one is a mining or rough tile. So as an example right here, we've got an iron tile. This is improved with a mine. Over here, we've also got a kaolin tile, which is improved with a quarry, but it's flat. But this still gets the same bonus. However, down here, we've got a rough tile that's got a pasture on it, but this is improved with a granary. And what we want to do is we want to try and match up all of those benefits from the same warehouse building. There are 4 key warehouse buildings: the granary, the sawpit, or rather the sawpit is down here, the brickyard, and then the fishing quay. And ideally, we don't want to go any more than 2 of these in the early game, if we can avoid it. Ideally, we want to have just 1, and that's normally the brickyard, because the brickyard is, in my opinion, the best opening building to go for, and that's just simply because of the amount of bonuses that you get from rough terrain. But you would only ever want to go the brickyard if you've got the rough terrain to support it. So how much can you actually justify going for something like that? When should you actually look to go into a single building versus going into a double building? Well, let's get into it and talk about it. So if we take a look here at our start, there's not a lot of rough terrain. There's not a lot of mines that we're going to be able to see. We realistically have 1, 2. There could be more that are over on this side. So we're going to go ahead and move to definitely the most optimal tile here. The only one that's got fresh water, the only one that's going to take us in that first turn and still give us a guarantee that we're going to be able to reach this iron and all the spots that we want to as soon as we possibly could, and not give us any risk of going any further. Now, we might look to potentially come up here, but then that's going to lock us out of 2 tiles. We want to make sure that we're only locked out of 1. We were locked out of 1 on this tile down here. So by moving to this position, it should hopefully give us the best possible spawn here. So we'll go ahead, we'll settle down our town, and now we can see exactly what we've got around us. We want to be looking for more rough tiles. So what we're going to do is we're just going to grab our scout, and we're going to go scout towards the north. Even though the ice wall is towards the north, we need to be able to make a decision about what we're going to be doing relatively early on in this game. So as an example, if we were going to see we've got the ice wall to the top, that means that we want to scout towards the south. We're still kind of towards the middle of the map. So here we've got tropical, which is in the middle of the map. So we could definitely still justify moving towards the north. So we'll go ahead, we'll do one tile, and we'll do a search, and that should reveal everything for us. And now we can really make an assessment. Okay, how many rough tiles do we actually have? We've got one here, a second one here, a third one out here, a fourth one here, and then we've got gold that's outside the city center. That's not rough. So realistically, it looks like it's probably going to be a 2-building start, because this is not enough for rough. Enough for rough would be 4 tiles. And while this technically is 4 tiles, this is really far away for us to get, and it's not connecting. If we had like a rough tile here and then the iron was here, then we could totally justify it, because then we could go into this, take this tile, and then we could take this one, and we kind of have them all connected. But everything's really too far away. There's no way we're going to be able to get to all of these tiles and still be claiming that we've got enough for rough. So it's important that we look at what we've actually got. So here on a start like this, the one key thing that I'm seeing is that we actually have quite a lot of woodcutters. We've got one here, we've got a second one, a third one out over on this position, 4th, 5th, 6th. That is plenty of woodcutters for us to be able to begin building off from the start of this base. So I'm thinking realistically, it's probably going to be a start like this. You would simply go into a saw pit. That would be your opening in a situation like this. You could eventually go into a brickyard, but that would be the general idea. And that's the reason why we settled here. That's the reason that that this position makes the most sense. We got a first turn settle in. We've got fresh water coming through from the watering hole. We've got free tiles that are around the city. We went up to, ideally we want 5 tiles that are free. We had that same number over here, so we didn't technically lose any. We want to identify valuable resources in the early game. Key components here being sheep or wool. Kaolin, a really powerful resource early on, compared to something like gold, which is a great resource once you get towards maybe like, it depends what speed you're playing on, but once you can start affording buying buildings, it's really, really useful. But for the early game, it doesn't make a lot of sense to grab it unless you're going into like a rough start. Then it can totally make sense to get. And it's the exact same with iron, right? You want to get iron once you start getting out your infantry units, and you want to take it early if it makes sense for you to do it. But here in this playthrough, it doesn't really make sense for us to go for it unless we actually do it, or unless we actually do a rough start. So what would our base look like? Let's just quickly talk about it. We would look to go, in a situation like this, we would put our library on this tile right here together with a barracks, and that's going to give us +1, +2, and +3 from our city center. Now, you might be tempted to come out towards this tile right here and get a +3, and that's a perfectly viable option as well. To do that. The only thing is that if you do that, you're going to need a connector to get out here. And what are you going to connect it with? Are you going to connect it with a brickyard, with a saw pit? Okay, that makes sense. Now my question is, what are you going to connect your monument with? Because your monument wants to be out here. You don't want to have your monument adjacent to your city center. You never want to have your monument adjacent to the city center because it provides influence. If we take a look at the monument in the tech tree, sorry, that is not the right tech tree, it provides a base yield of 1 influence, and that rolls over into the next age, and it becomes 2 influence. And we want to keep that because influence is probably the most important resource in the game. So we always want that outside. So that would mean that you'd have to change your opening. It would mean maybe you do a stone pit or a brickyard here, a saw pit over here, and now all of a sudden they're not on the same tile. They're on different tiles, and because they're on different tiles, you're missing out on 1 science and 1 culture here. So the fact that you've gone for this extra +1 adjacency now means that you've missed out on 1 science, 1 culture here. And keep in mind, you're always going to be able to take advantage of this adjacency later on in the game, once you actually get access to your academy, to your blacksmith. And of course, there's an argument to be made, well, this comes sooner in the game, so there's more value from it, and I hear that argument. It comes down to what you think is the best. Okay, so now that we've talked a little bit about this, about base building, the fact that we've been able to identify the high-value resources, the high-value adjacencies, we obviously don't have anywhere good for a market or a garden, and that's okay. We've moved away from mountains as well. I'm pretty confident that we've solved this spawn. So let's go ahead, let's take a look at a couple more spawns. We'll just jump out of this game and we'll just go do a couple more random ones, and we're just going to work through those same rules that we did before. So we're just going to go random civ, random leader, and let's see what the game gives us, because you never really know. All right, looks like we got Tecumseh of the Mayan Empire, or the Maya Empire. I actually learned yesterday that the language is called Mayan. Oh my lord, have a look at this. Okay, so first and foremost, is that a lake? Yeah, that's a lake. Okay, wonderful. So a lake is always going to be able to provide you with a water source, a fresh water source. So if we take a look here, all of these tiles are going to be fresh water. There is also freshwater tiles to the back here. So let's review our start. So first and foremost, it looks like we've got 3 mining resources. Let's turn on our yields as well, just so we've got a bit of an idea here. Now, we really want to go into mining if we possibly can. But once again, I'm only seeing 3 resources. So there's a part of me that's thinking, okay, well, we could just go into the mining opening, because salt is actually one of the best resources in the game. Even though plus 20% production towards training units is kinda meh, the actual resource itself is incredibly good. It's one of those resources, you know, we were talking about the fact that you want to identify valuable resources early, things like gypsum, which are very good because they give you plus 2 production to the capital. Salt is great because it's a plus 2 food on a mine, and then that mine is just going to add more production. So you can get a 2 food, 3 production, 1 happiness tile yield out of those. So if we can work those, that's really, really good. So an opening like this might be a 2 building opening compared to that 1 building opening. And that would look something like going scout into a brickyard, into a settler, into a woodcutter or a granary, or sorry, a saw pit or a granary, and then going into more settlers after that. That would essentially be it. So let's go through our rules. So we want to do a first turn settle. So what does that really give us with regard to options? The game is suggesting that we settle here. If we settle here, we're going to be off Freshwater. That's going to be an immediate 5 happiness penalty. And that is something that I would not even consider as a possibility. Alternatively, we could look to go to this spot right here. This would also be a first turn settle. We could look to potentially come up around these parts. But I think, to be honest, just looking at this, it doesn't make sense for us to go back at all. We could even look to come out over here onto any one of these tiles, but it's a gamble, right? It's a gamble, and to be honest, we just don't want to be making gambles. We really don't want to do it. Even though in the first video that we were talking about right here, I think we covered quite extensively the gamble, and look, I don't think it's really worthwhile doing it, because you are, yeah, it's risky. Let's just put it that way. So let's identify our tiles around the town center. Sorry, that's my Age of Empires coming out right there. Around the city center. So we've got 5 tiles on land and the 1 that's on lake or coast. So we can put a fishing key here with a lighthouse. So this is absolutely fine. Even though this will come through a little bit later on the adjacency, that's still absolutely fine. So now we continue assessing. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 together with the 6. Let's assess our adjacencies. So this looks pretty decent for a library. However, this is also a really good monument spot. And remember, we never want to put the monument around the first ring of the city. So this is probably calling to me a little bit more as a monument spot. And then you could just put your library out here, get a +1 on your library. Then you get a +1 on your monument anyway. Now, there's definitely an argument that you could say, okay, let's do a brickyard here. And then we'll do a library here, pick up the +2. And then we'll do a monument out here, and that's fine as well. You could absolutely go for an opening like that, because I mean that's definitely justifiable. But are you really going to go for a library before your monument? Maybe, yeah. I think that's definitely a possibility. So now that we've done that, we want to identify our ocean tiles. We want to make sure that we have got not a lot of navigable river tiles where possible, but we want to make sure that that is also following the rules that are previously set. So can we do that without moving off Freshwater? And the answer is no. As an example, if this was a bog here, we could absolutely justify moving to this position right here or this position right here. Looks like we've also got coast up towards this spot. So let's go ahead. We're going to settle in place. I think that's definitely the best call on a spawn like this. We don't want a warrior. We want a Jaguar Slayer, because that's going to be our real opening. And let's take a look and see what we've got. And we've actually got enough for a mining start. So we've got 1, 2, 3, and a 4th mining resource out here. This is why Tundra is just so good, because you've got 4 resources and they're all mining resources, and they're all absolutely insane. Like, they're such good resources. So to get to this tile out here, we'd probably have to do something. Look, it's probably not part of the video, but I'll include it in here. So I think on an opening like this, you probably want to run to the salt as quickly as you could, just for 1 salt to start off with. Then you'd go into the gypsum, and then you'd look to come out towards this. The only trouble is, oh yeah, I don't know how you actually skip on these. You might actually want to delay the jade. You'd probably take this salt first and then come out to the jade last. But it's going to be a last ditch thing that you go for. Anyway, let's move on to our next one now. We're going to go through a whole bunch of these. Now, keep in mind, there are exceptions to these rules that exist. So, exceptions for the mayor, exceptions for the Mississippians, exceptions for the Khmer. So, those, we can talk a little bit about them and about what exceptions they actually are. But we've got ourselves another spawn here. It doesn't really look like we've got many options. I don't think we can move any single tile here without actually, yeah, we can't. So because of this, we're just going to re-roll here, even though like we would absolutely play this out. And just to quickly talk about it, so we would go monument. Oh, where do you even put the monument? You could probably put the monument on this tile. That's where your garden market's going to go. That's a +3, though. You could probably get more than that. Maybe over on this tile right here. Can't reach it though. And then library over here. something like that. But yeah, the reason why we'll re-roll is just because we've got no movement. So there's no decision to make. At least in my mind, there is no way I'd be moving, especially on a coastal spawn at the north. If you move on a spawn like this, you're going to get a city-state here, you're going to get a city-state here, and a city-state here, and they're all going to be hostile and coming for you. So let's just re-roll that one, just because, well, we want to make sure that we have got some decisions that we can actually make here. Hopefully we get the Mississippians or the Khmer, or the Mayans, but instead we're going to get Tecumseh again, but this time we're playing on the Egyptians. Okay, Tecumseh, don't give us Tundra. All right, look at this spawn. Okay, how do you fix a spawn like this? That is a great question. So let's analyze and follow these rules that we've got, because there are some really good tiles in here, but the problem is these tiles are not good for the city center. Now, of course, we're playing as Egypt, so there's an exception that can be made that, oh, okay, but you're playing Egypt, you want to have these tiles, sure. But if we're playing Egypt, I'm going to be putting my bath here, my fishing key here, and then I've got 1, 2 tiles that I'm locked out of. These 2 I'm locked out of basically until I unlock a bridge. And I'm never going to get my adjacency bonuses from that. Now, there's no reason that you have to play around palace adjacency bonuses. They're strong, but there are stronger things in the game. But other than that, this might actually be a spawn where I would look at moving. So I've already seen that I've got 1 rough tile here, a 2nd rough tile here. This is all desert, so there can be something like a Petra that we could potentially find in here. So what I think might be the best is we try and get to this tile. Let's have a look and see how many turns is it going to take us to get there. So we'll jump across. That's the first turn. City-state literally just spawned right here, I'm sure of it. And we're going to dive up over onto here. And you can see just how punishing it can be to play as Egypt. This is part of the reason why, when it comes to my tier list that I do, which are on the Discord, I don't publish them on the YouTube, that I don't rate Egypt highly. Because when it comes to these kind of spawns, these are terrible, right? We're already on turn 3 right now, and we're only just settling. And if we took this position, we've got fresh water that comes in off the river. We've got 1 tile that's now been taken away from us, but it's much better than the 1, 2, 3, 4 that were taken away from us, as well as the not particularly good spot for the monument. So let's just go ahead. We'll settle in this position and see what we've got. And to be honest, this looks like a much better spawn for me, because I'm seeing we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 tiles that we can all use for wood cutting. We'll go ahead, we'll grab the scout and just double check, and we'll force roll over the turn, and let's have a look and see what we got. I mean, it's all luck of the draw, right? But you know, we've moved closer to grassland, and as a result, that's meant that we've got a whole bunch of forests up here. So whether or not this was the right call, I don't know, because one of the key things you're going to need to weigh up is, over the course of the game, how much more of an advantage are you going to get because you now have access to a lot more productive tiles? Over the course of a game, how much more value are you going to get because you can now build 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 tile or 5 quarters adjacent to your city center, compared to before where you could build 1, 2, well, technically 1, 2, 3, and then if you're going to do bridges, then it's 4. And that can be a huge bonus if you're looking to play a more specialist focused style, which I encourage. I think it's probably the most optimal play at the moment, with the exception of a couple of niche circumstances. I'll give the caveat right there. But yeah, I think it's the most optimal style of playing. It's a great way to max your science without too much cost. So I think it's definitely the right call. So let's go ahead. We'll do another roll right there. It's a really difficult decision though, especially when you're moving in on the first turn of the game, and you know that you're going to be rolling over into a second turn, and there's really nothing that you can do to stop it. So here we've got Lafayette of the Greek. Dude, how many times have we gotten Greek today? Okay, is this another one where we can't move? It's another one where we can't move. Are you serious? Okay, I mean, we can just quickly assess this spawn, because this is looking like an incredibly good spawn. So we have got... This is a monument right here. This is a garden and a market right here. And that is going to be a library right there. I mean, that's pretty much it. That's a plus 1, 2, 3, 4 garden market. That is a plus 1, 2 on the monument. And it's the second ring, which is what you want. And that is second ring from the capital. So you'd go saw cutter opening, sawmill, saw cutter. Sorry, the saw pit opening. And you would just look to, I think for the opening like this, you would probably go... You could even do a duel. You could do a duel because you've got the wool here as well. So you would settle. You would come out towards the wool. You would grab the wool. Oh my god, there's Kaylin here as well. Dude, this is wow. That's a plus 3. Okay, you know what? I'm just gonna quickly save this for you guys. I'm sure there's people that are gonna want to play this one as well. That's a good start, dude. You don't have to think much, but I'll say it right now. That is a very good start. Woof. Okay, let's see if we've got one that, wow, I tell you what, we might even do a playthrough on that start. That was looking very juicy. My gosh. What a start. What do we got now? We got Robins. I tell you what, it really seems to favor the maybe that's just because so many leaders like the Robins. Okay, we're down in the tundra again. I can see 4 resources that are around me, but once again, it's important to remember, and I don't think we really touched on this earlier. When you're identifying valuable resources, obviously there's 2 components of that. There's the yields that they give, and then there's the bonuses that they give. Jade doesn't give a very good bonus, but it gives an incredible yield once you've started putting the mining on it. But one thing to note is we're very far away from these resources. It's going to take us a while to actually grow out to them. We got ring 2 here, ring 2 here. This is a ring 3. This is a ring 3 as well, but we do have a rough tile here, so this is definitely enough for rough. I don't think this is another case where you just don't need to move. We've got 6 tiles around the city center. We start on Freshwater. We're playing as Rome, as Catherine. And I think we could look to move up towards here, but there's no reason to do it. The only spot that you could move is here. It's offset off Freshwater. This one is also off Freshwater. You've got a great monument spot. Once again, this is another easy one to be able to identify. When it comes to Civ 7 compared to Civ 6, you're a lot less punished by the tile that you settle on. That's another key thing that we haven't really talked much about. What do we got? We got Ibn Battuta on the Persians. All right, here we go. Maybe a little bit of a desert spawn for us. So, indeed it is. We've got plains and desert. This is a lovely spawn. We have got a whole bunch of resources. But yeah, I think one of the key things to remember is that you're not really punished if you settle on rough or on flat, or there's a quarry here that I could have built, and now that's going to be part of the cap. It's not really about that. It's much more about these sort of auxiliary things. I don't know if that's the right word for it. Okay, so let's go through our rules once again. So first turn settle. Where are our options? We've got a lot of options. We could go pretty much anywhere. So here. We could even look to settle over on the ocean if that's your thing. Definitely not my thing though. I would stay away from that. That's a beautiful little spot for a garden and a market though. We'll say that much. So this spot right here, we could go up towards here because that's going to be Freshwater as well. We could technically settle on this tile. But remember that those rules that we follow, right? Like if we look at our Freshwater lens here, so in the first turn, we can't make it here or here. I mean, we can, but we'd have to roll over. We can't do this one either because we've got a vegetated tile, and that's going to use up all of our movement points. So we could look to try and take... I think it's probably best that we stay in place if we judge it from those. Then Freshwater, we've obviously talked about. First turn settle, we've talked about. Free tiles around the city center. We've got 6 tiles free here. If we go here, we've only got 5. If we go here, we've only got 4. So now we've definitely narrowed it down to just this position. We've already identified this. This is just another case of we just settle in place. The game has given us a good spawn. I mean, I really enjoy doing these because it's like, to me, it feels a little bit like Sudoku and solving, the base building element of it and looking at it. Okay, what information do I have? What information where can I put in the numbers that are going to make the most sense? And we've got Zerk. Oh, wow. Oh, wow. Wow. I'm just going to save it right now. I'm just going to save it. If you want to play any of these saves, just join the Discord. So this is a rough start. That looks like a rough vegetated tile. Look at that. It's got a tree in the middle. So this is an incredibly powerful start. Wow. That's going to be, oh my lord, it just gets better. The more you look at it, the better it gets. This is incredible. So I don't think we're going to be moving on this tile. The only real argument I could see for moving would be to go to this tile right here, and that would just be to get closer to the cotton. We talked earlier about identifying valuable resources and making sure that you're able to get them in the early game, but there are ways that you can go around that. As an example, so let's identify where we're going to settle here. So this is the only place that we've got that's got 6 tiles free. If we go here, we're blocked by the camels. If we go here, we're blocked by the cotton. So this makes the most sense. The only trouble is, how do we get out onto this tile? Well, that's the little trick that we're going to show, because we want to get out here as quick as we can. There's not a huge value in getting out here super duper fast, but we want to try and pick this up before we start moving into other tiles. So much so that we would prioritize getting the cotton over getting all of the rough tiles, because that's going to empower us even more once we do it. So let's go through our things. We want Freshwater. So where have we got access to? We've got a whole bunch of different Freshwater tiles, but which ones can we actually move to on the first turn? And the answer is only these. Oh, technically we could also move here, but we don't know what's here, so we don't want to take that gamble. We've already talked about the free tiles around the city center. We've identified the high value resources right here. All of these resources, these are good resources. In fact, they're all great resources with the exception of marble. But the cotton is like the one that we want right now. We need to make sure that we have access to this, or we have a pathway to it. So let's get that pathway to it, because when it comes to adjacencies, we've got it right here. We don't want to move any further away from this. We can't take this tile, just simply because how are we going to get around there? I mean, you could come out like that, but there's no 3 ring. So that's going to be 1, 2, 3 garden market, 1, 2 down towards this position. That's going to be our monument. That gives us at least a +1, probably a +2 adjacency. And then for our science building, it's going to go right here for a +3. So let's go ahead. We'll settle. And we'll grab our scout, and let's play this one through just a couple of turns just to show how we'd actually get out to that cotton. Okay, it's just going to be a +1, but we'll still absolutely take it. And we're going to start off by going into pottery. Now, keep in mind, we're playing on the standard speed, if I remember correctly. Indeed, it's the standard speed. It's only the governor rating. So we'll just go into a second scout here. We're not, let's move our scouts out. We'll play this one. So what we're going to do is we're going to come out towards this position, and we need to count how many tiles it's going to get. It'll take for us to get here. So it's going to take us 3. So how do we get out there the most efficient way? Well, there's 2 correct answers. The first one is this tile, then over here, and then the second one is this tile, this tile, this tile, and then over here. But there is one answer that's more correct than the others, and the answer is through this tile right here, and that's because this tile is rough. We want to try and avoid building on top of this tile as long as we possibly can. We will eventually crush it. We will eventually build something on top of it, like we will all of these rough tiles within the ring around the city center, but we do not want to immediately do that. And that's going to be a key component to our early game strategy. So let's go ahead. We'll take this single tile here. Let's turn our yields on so we can track our yields. You can see we're about to grow in 3 turns. So now we'll move out over towards this position, and we've got a hostile city-state nearby. It looks like it didn't even matter. And we're just going to take the gold. Lovely. Thank you very much. And I think we might even just continue going in that direction. Yeah, it looks like we've got quite a bit of space ahead of us here. So we can go onto the rough tile, and we'll use that. We've discovered a new continent. We've got a couple more up there. And now is the time for us to... Oh my, that's a second one. That's a second. We've got 2 hostile city-states around us right now. We probably want to look to come up here. So now we've got our second population point. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop down our farm onto this tile. But we want to work the cotton, right? The moment that we start working the cotton, it's going to provide us 2 food and 2 production. So what we can do is we can now that we've got this second citizen out here, this is going to act as an anchor point, and we're going to evict the first citizen. We're going to put a granary down on top of that citizen. And what that's going to do is it's going to kick that citizen out. And now we can grow our city once again. It's the same citizen from before, don't worry. He's still here with us, but we're going to drop him off over here. And that's going to mean that now that citizen is working the cotton instead. If we go and have a look at our city, you'll see that we've got cotton inside it, which means that despite only being on turn 7, and despite not getting over here super duper fast, we're still able to get the cotton at a meaningful timing. Now, I'm already hearing the folks saying, but I don't want to make a granary. I don't want to have to make a granary. I still want to make a scout, and that's okay. Just cancel it. Just keep making a scout. Not a problem at all. All done. And we found a natural wonder. So we'll be making sure that we look to get to 5 population as quickly as we can so that we can go and settle that. Let's just send you off over there. Look at the scouts. They are hovering around us right now. Let's see if we can get a bit more line of sight. Wow, there is a lot of goodie huts for us to grab. So now that we've unlocked pottery, that's going to mean we probably want to go for the science here. That's going to mean that we can now build a brickyard. And the brickyard is going to be really important because that provides us +1 on all of these rough terrain tiles. So literally pretty much every tile that's in our capital right here. So what we can do is we can then build our brickyard on that tile. But maybe you don't want to build the brickyard on that tile for whatever reason. Maybe you've decided there needs to be something else that is there. So we can go and grab the granary and put it in there. We're not going to actually build it, but now we can choose which tile we want to put the brickyard on. But I do actually want to build the brickyard on that tile. So I'm going to bring the brickyard back up to the top of the queue. I'm going to get rid of the granary because I don't want to build that. And now we're just going to build the brickyard in that place. So even though we hadn't unlocked the brickyard, we were still able to get the brickyard in that slot and allowed us to get out over towards this position. So let's make sure we go slot our policy. We're going to take the charismatic leader and move into mysticism. We'll make sure that we take oligarchy as well. And our units are going to continue picking up relics. So I think we've got a total of 3 scouts, which is a very good number of scouts to have. I think you probably shouldn't go less than that in most games. We'll take the culture here. And what have we got? We've got give the land over to the horses or 20 food to passer. Look, we're pretty greedy, so I think it's probably best that we just go ahead and do that. On top of that, even if we had horses, like what are we going to be doing with our horses? We've got a whole bunch of immortals. So now we've grown in the cap. Once again, let's get our things on. And we are going to be taking the next cotton. So now we've got both of the cottons at turn 11 that are going to be working value for us, and we've kept the integrity of our city. We didn't have to compromise on moving towards a tile like this that then cuts out one of the city center rings. We didn't have to move to this tile right here, which not only cuts out that city center ring, but also means that we lose the adjacency on the coast, because here we wouldn't be able to get anything even close to the coast. And now we've got at least, I think this is going to be a +3 garden and market slot, which is very, very nice. So it means that we are able to guarantee that this was indeed the best spawn for us here. And now as we approach, oh, that's a hostile city-state right there. As we approach towards the the first settler, it means that we are in perfect positioning right now. So we'll go into masonry, and we'll move these little scouts one more. Do we take the money? Oh, we definitely take their money. That's a lot of money right there. And we're just going to move over to the other side. And now, after the completion of the granary, of the completion of the brickyard, we're going to be able to now build our first settler. And that's it. That's in 14 turns. That explains the start. Now, when it comes to evicting this citizen, keep in mind that if you wanted to do that, absolutely, you could. You could say, hey, I'm going to put a granary on this tile, and I'm going to kick out that citizen. And I'm going to have it work a more productive tile. But when you do that, you lock that tile. That tile now becomes that tile now becomes essentially like a requirement that you are going to have to build here eventually. And there is a way to get around that, and that is just by always having the granary in the queue at the top. But the trouble is, if you want to build the granary, now all of a sudden you can't build it, or like you can build it in this tile, but now you're going to need to build something else there. So you'll have the granary in this tile, and then your saw pit can't do anything other than go in this tile. So then you have to put the saw pit in that tile, and it creates a lot of fuss. So I'd be very hesitant about doing the boop on the second tile. Other than that, when you're reallocating your citizen, just keep in mind that while this tile technically looks better, right? You see the camels and you're like, hey, 2 hammers or 2 production and 1 gold, that is way better than just 2 production. But remember, this is going to get better. It's going to get much better, much sooner, and that's a key component. We're looking to get +1 production on mines and quarries here. And then once we also, let's roll through a couple more turns, just because this is important to show. We can even force through these turns. We don't care too much about the actual actions that are going on here. Probably should have taken that culture. That would have helped us in this situation. That's all right. We're losing scouts. We don't mind. We've met Ashoka. Hey, Ashoka. So we've now unlocked mysticism, and so now what's going to happen, so if we take a look at these tiles, they are about to go through the roof. Once we get our Pantheon, so if we go down to our Pantheon, we're going to take stone circles, +1 production to clay pits, mines, and quarries, one of the best Pantheons in the game, and that's going to give you, at this point right here, if we grow, once again, that's going to give us at the very least 2 production, but then it's going to give us a 3rd, a 4th, a 5th, a 6th, a 7th production, an 8th production, 9th, 10th, you get the picture. There's a lot of quarries, mines that are in here, and that's why it's so important to do it. So that's going to be our update to the settling guide. Just before we close out the video, I thought it was important to touch back on the exceptions. I mentioned earlier that we'd talk about them, but then forgot to, so this is me talking about them. The first one is the Maya. The Maya have an exception for vegetated terrain. Often when the Maya spawn in, you're going to be surrounded by vegetated terrain. It's normally best to just pretty much always take these positions, just simply because you're not going to be able to find a decent move. There's exceptions to that. Again, if you're playing Tubman, there's a good chance that you might be able to, because she has an exemption from that vegetation terrain and the movement bonuses that are associated with it, or movement penalties that are associated with it. But that's pretty much it. But you do get that nice little bonus for the vegetated terrain. So you want to try and move towards it where possible. That still sort of follows the rest of the other rules as the music peaks behind us. The next one is the Mississippians. So the Mississippians gain +1 food adjacency for resources. So it can be beneficial for you to spawn next to resources or to start next to resources, even though there is obviously a penalty associated with not being able to build a quarter on the adjacent tile to the city center. If you can get a food adjacency from a resource that is adjacent to a city center, it will mean that you'll be able to grow sooner in the early game. It's not a huge benefit, so I wouldn't prioritize it, but it is one of those exceptions that I felt it was important to mention. The final one is going to be from the Khmer. The Khmer have got a bonus where their rivers do not remove the natural yield on the tile. And what this means is that if you spawn on a river as the Khmer, it can be very beneficial for you not to leave the river. Other civilizations, especially if you spawn near a river and there's another tile nearby that you can go to that's got potential fresh water on it, they can 100% do that. But as the Khmer, if you're moving, say, adjacent to a watering hole, they're not going to carry over this bonus. So we want to try and minimize that loss of bonus as much as we can with the Khmer. So make sure to prioritize this when you're looking at your settles, when you're playing with the Khmer, when you're playing with any of the other civilizations that we've talked about here. Other than that, back to the video. I hope it makes sense. I hope that you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've been able to take something away from this video. This has been an update to the previous video that we did, because there's been a lot of new things that we've learned, and we're slowly solving Civilization 7. Keep in mind that in a month or 2, we might release another settling guide that will talk about things that we missed in this video, and that's just part of the process. We are learning, and we're going and hoping to improve all the time. So if you've got any feedback for me, if you got any feedback about this video, feel free to leave it down in the comments below. If you've enjoyed the video, I encourage you to leave a like. It really helps out the traction of the videos. And of course, if you're looking forward to more Civ 7 content, make sure you hit that subscribe button because there is always time for one more turn.